Good. Someone has a question.
All right. I think we're live. That's a big I think.
It says live in the top.
You know how we are. You know how we are with our technology.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's get this tweeted out. All right. We are live. Look at that. All right. I have done my job of tweeting it out, which is kind of all I'm here for. All right, so I got a question for you to start this off.
No.
So I got to figure out how I'm going to phrase this without it sounding weird, but it's not. I promise it's not a weird question. It's going to sound weird, but it's not a weird question. Do you ever like shower with, like, you didn't do anything before that required a shower and you're not going to do anything later that requires a shower? Like sometimes you're just like watching like on a Saturday, you might be watching college football. It's like comes like, I don't know, like 5 o'clock or something. You're like, I haven't really done anything today, but I'm just going to like shower to make myself feel better and then get right back on the couch. Do you ever do that?
No, I'd say I usually have a purpose when I shower.
Okay. Well, then this
I
is going
think
to be
always
hypothetical then.
when I shower.
So this is going to be hypothetical then because we were having a debate. So I guess that, I don't know if that's just my friend group or whatever, but so sometimes like yesterday, like if I'm not doing anything, it'll be like, I don't know, 4 or 5 o'clock. I'll be like, whatever, I'm just going to shower just to make myself feel better. Even though I'm really not going to do anything. So if that was your mentality, do you think after you showered, you would put deodorant on, or do you think you would just shower and that was that?
No, I wouldn't.
See, and that's because then that brought up a debate we were having of what is the ratio of you putting on deodorant to showering? Like, I think every time, I don't think I've ever, I want to say I've ever, I think like 99% of the time I shower, I put deodorant on after. Is that a weird thing?
I'm definitely lower than that. Because
like even if I like shower after work, I'll like still like, because to me it's like I feel cleaner, even though deodorant just makes you smell better. It's not really like it cleans you.
Well, and like I work from home. I get up, I shower. If I'm not going anywhere, then it's 50-50 whether I put deodorant on. I know I'm not leaving my apartment that day.
But you don't like you don't. I mean, obviously you can feel gross just not doing anything, but you just sit there and be gross.
Yeah, I mean, even if I'm like, I put on a polo because I have on-camera meetings, I still don't need to, especially if I just put a hoodie on and a hat because I don't have on-camera meetings. Probably not.
It's so funny because after work, like, if I have to go somewhere, like I'll try and shower and whatever. But for me, it's like I don't want to go out smelling like chicken everywhere, and then people are like, "Oh, you don't smell like Chick-fil-A." Like it's a bad thing. I don't smell like Chick-fil-A. Like when I go see you, it's like, what? Like you want me to smell like chicken all the time? Like that's not how this is gonna work.
Not the end of the world.
Yeah, I know, but it's like I don't want to smell like this all day, and then people are just like, "How come you don't smell like that?" It's like because I shower, believe it or not. All right, let's do you just want to kind of go through games on the slate? I don't know what you kind of want to do. We're just gonna kind of talk, this.
It's up to you. I have a couple player specific questions, but I'm happy to just go through the games on the slate. I don't know. I know you put out bets and stuff. I just do a couple of my buddies and I just pick a side total on every game and then just put money on whoever wins the week. So I do have picks on every game. Not that they're good, but I have been winning the competition.
Spread or straight up?
Spread and total.
All right. Well, let's do let's go through whatever player questions or whatever things you had, and then we'll just go through some games after that.
Yeah. My biggest question for the week. Well, I told you my biggest question is whether Josh Palmer plays. I'm probably playing Rashee Rice instead of him, and then playing Mixon instead of him in the PPR league. So I don't think it matters whether he plays or not. But do you still like Rashee Rice over Josh Palmer this week?
So, well, two things. One, Mahomes got added to the injury report for an illness. I think he's like probable still, but that's just kind of one of those weird things.
And it's super cold there.
Well, and so I was gonna say this is almost like a weird thing, but like I kind of like Rashee Rice more like in the snow, like kind of in that kind of a game. You know, people always are, oh, it's snowing, it's whatever. But his kind of game, I feel like, is the get him the ball and kind of just, you know, it's slippery out there. Like, you know, they always say it's harder for the defenders because the guy on offense knows where he's going. So it's a lot, you know, less likely. I would say, yeah. The other thing with Josh Palmer, which shouldn't matter and hasn't mattered, because it appears that Josh Palmer and Quentin Johnston have no impact on each other, that it's not, you know, one, like when Palmer has been out, it's been Johnston. But for me, it's like at some point you got to feel like they're going to start getting him the ball, right? Like at some point, even if it's just like the pressure of like they took him before Zay Flowers and I think Addison, right? Were Zay Flowers and Addison, I think they were the two picks that were right after Johnston in the first round.
I think that's right, yeah.
So that's the only thing that concerns me. And like I said, Zay was, for me, he was the guy. It was so weird because Zay was the guy that I always liked the most out of that group, but I didn't want the Ravens to take him because he's like one of those guys where it feels like he's good on other teams, but he's not on us. But obviously the Ravens have figured out how to use him. But I mean, yeah, from college, you know, you look at Quentin Johnston from TCU when he was there, it's like, you know, so that's the only thing that would scare me with Josh Palmer. Like I said, yeah, it hasn't mattered yet whether Johnston's kind of, because he hasn't really had that game where he's gotten, you know, I think it's 5 targets is the highest game he's had so far. So it's like he hasn't really had that. But at some point, you got to feel like, yeah, and you'd think like without Mike Williams, but Josh Palmer just kind of steps into that Mike Williams role, you know, in terms of that long, you know, if Mike Williams, not to go on a tangent, he's one of those guys that like if he could stay healthy for like 14 games a year, like if the Chargers would sign up for him to be healthy like 13, 14 games every year, and it's just like he'd be a Pro Bowl every single year, but it's crazy. That's one of those things where it's like, you know, he's going to be a big what if, because I think this is his 4th straight year he's going to miss more than, I think it's 4 or 5 games, that's crazy. At some point, you got to be like, you know. But yeah, so go back to your question. I would play Rashee Rice. I think.
What are your expectations realistically for Mixon this week?
Okay, well, this is coming from a biased point of view because Joe Mixon's one of those guys that I just I don't ever consider drafting him in fantasy. I don't play him, and just because I don't want to say he's like one-dimensional in terms of like a guy like Chubb, where it's like he's got to go for 100+ yards and 2 touchdowns, because he does kind of catch balls, but he doesn't really catch balls in kind of the offense the way it's set up right now. So I don't love Mixon like on a week-to-week basis. Today, I mean, it's fine. So, I mean, the question is when you're talking about like the 49ers, it's like, are we talking about what they were first 4 weeks, you know, where, you know, this unpenetrable defense, you know, whatever? Or are we talking about the team that made how should I put it nicely? What's a nice way to call your quarterback when he's playing at prime time?
He's not bad in prime time. He's lost games, but he plays well.
The 49ers found a way to lose to Kirk Cousins in prime time.
There you go. That's yes.
Was that a nice way to put it?
That's probably the best way to put it. I mean,
do you okay?
1 week of defense too.
Well, okay. So, and in terms of, this is a question I wanted to ask you because I've seen both sides of this. The Addison play right before half. Is that luck? So is that skill? Is that a combination?
I mean, it's probably a combination. They had 2 plays like that and 1 went each way. Because he had pretty much the same play on the first drive, where the defender stole the ball from him, and then that time he stole the ball from the defender. So, the way he kind of came back and took it, that should have been the easiest pick that safety's had, or the corner. But the way he came back at it, I think, is skill. the way it falls, the way he ends up with the ball as opposed to not having the ball in the first one, I think that's the lucky part.
So the reason I asked that is because, the few times I am right, I like to toot my own horn. And I remember when during the draft process that I said that Addison was going to have, this was an exact quote, Larry Fitzgerald like hands. And that was a Larry Fitzgerald hands kind of play. So if we can chalk that up to him, and when we can put that, like spot number 1 on the blackboard, we'll get like 3 or 4 more of those. And because that was the guy that I wanted the Ravens draft. I wanted them to take Addison. And I think if you're looking at Addison versus Zay Flowers right now, it's kind of, I think both teams are kind of happy with where they're at.
Yeah, I'd agree. When it fell to us, I was really hoping we draft Addison, so I was happy. That's probably who I wanted once Johnston was gone, but that was just because I watched Johnston playing in my conference, so I wanted him. But I'd say Larry Fitzgerald probably would have caught both of those balls and not dropped the first one.
Well, we're still in a rookie year, JP. I said we're gonna have Larry Fitzgerald like hands. So if we can get one of those a year for the next decade, then we'll be good.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
All right. Anything else player specific or any certain games you want to talk about, or anything before we just kind of go through some stuff?
I mean, quickly, I guess, what do you think of Derrick Henry's usage? Is it getting better? What's his value going forward, I guess? So
two ways to look at it. It came out yesterday. It sounds like they're not going to trade him. So if they're not going to trade him, it sounds that to me, and you could look at it both ways in terms of, maybe if they're going to trade him, they're going to give him a big usage week to try and, pump the numbers up and be like, look at what this guy can still do. Or it could be like, hey, we've kind of got a couple things lined up. We're not going to, use him. The issue with them is because it's weird. He's been catching more balls the past couple years, but this year, not as much in terms of being on the field for those kinds of downs. So when you're talking about usage, you still got to assume that in terms of carries, Derrick Henry, you're going to assume he's going to get 80% of the carries, 75, 80%. I think that's like a generic, good kind of way. But then if you're looking at like just snaps and usage, I mean, he's what's the backup? Tajay Sharp, is that his first name? Tajay
Spears. Tajay Spears.
Oh, Spears. What I say? Sharp. Tajay Spears.
Sharp.
He's been last week. He was on the field for 50% of the snaps, and obviously, if the Titans are not going to be a great team and they're going to be playing from down more than not, that takes Derrick Henry off the field. The other question is, with Tannehill not playing, do they want more of a veteran guy like a Derrick Henry back there with, whether it's Malik Willis or Will Levis, just in terms of helping like read the protection and just a guy back there that can do that. So if that's what they're going to do, and maybe Tannehill's out for a couple more weeks and Derrick Henry's on the field for 70% of the snaps, then I think his usage, I think Derrick Henry's usage, and I don't know that I have no stats backing this up, but my brain tells me that the percentage of snaps is kind of the percentage of usage generally he's going to get. So if he's on the field for 70% of the snaps, I would assume he's going to touch the ball for 70% of those 70%, if that makes sense. Because that's just kind of, he's on the field, they're going to use him.
Yeah, it definitely feels like they haven't been using him as much, obviously. But they trust Spears, and Spears hasn't been bad. So
yeah, it's weird because I think we're now at a point in the season where you trust Jonathan Taylor more than you trust Derrick Henry.
Ooh.
Especially with the Zach Moss issues.
With Zach Moss out, yeah. Going forward, I don't know. If Taylor plays well and like capitalizes on this opportunity, then yeah. If Taylor doesn't and Evans comes back and plays well, then
that's what McAfee said earlier this week. He said that it could be a split share, and then you're just gonna have one of those games where Jonathan Taylor is gonna have 140 yards and 3 touchdowns, and like, well, it's his job again, So yeah, I think that's interesting whether they're looking at a guy like Jonathan Taylor or a guy like Derrick Henry going forward. Well, and I'll ask you about another player in kind of that same realm. a guy whose his usage has been up and down, a guy who has a backup that's been getting some more touches. It's kind of hard to generalize with Ramondre Stevenson going forward, kind of what the Pats plan to do with him, because Ramondre was always a guy that the more they threw, the more he was almost on the field, especially last year with Damian Harris. So Ramondre is a guy that I kind of generally still like, especially because, you know, Patriots, if they're going to be playing down, you know, most weeks or majority of weeks, I think he still sees the field. But has Zeke's usage the past couple weeks, does that scare you at all for Ramondre, or you think Ramondre just kind of he's always going to be in that like kind of 70% snap range?
It was definitely better when Zeke wasn't as productive. Now he's more productive. That scares me a little, but yeah, I think Zeke's always going to be more of that goal line back, and Stevens is going to be the guy from 20 to 20, and then from there you just kind of hope you get lucky on a screen or on a passing play. That's usually more of the production in the red zone for him.
Yeah, and Ramondre is the kind of guy for like a fantasy purpose in terms of like PPR leagues, because he, like you said, he'll have games where he has that long screen, and even they'll put him out wide and he'll have 20, 30-yard catches. But he also has those games where he's just got like 8 catches for 38 yards. And it's just like, you look at it, it's like Ramondre, it's like, how does he have 22 points? Like he's got 8 catches for 40 yards and a touchdown. And it's like, okay.
Yeah.
Like you just kind of look at it, just, you know, because in the real game of football, these little 2-yard screens don't really mean much, you know, but PPR fantasy leagues, obviously, they do.
There's a question in the chat if you want.
What you're going to have to.
Oh, you not see the chat?
Well, I can, but I'd have to pull it up. So that's what
Michael Montgomery asked, would you prefer to play Downs, Deontay Johnson, or Kendrick Bourne today?
Downs, Deontay Johnson, or Kendrick Bourne? I think I would lean Deontay Johnson.
I was going to say, what did he do last week? I know he came back last
week. I
played him.
I don't know what he finished with. I do. The issue for Deontay, which sometimes teams just lock him up, and then that opens everything up for Pickens. And Pickens has been a lot more productive when Deontay's been on the field. So that could be the issue for Deontay Johnson. I'm going to look up what he did last week. And the issue with Josh Downs, I don't want to say is an issue, but it's like, not that he's on that Puka Nacua level, but it's kind of just like almost like, is this dude just like, or is it just he's just gonna keep putting up the same stats? Like he's just gonna keep putting up 100 yards. He's just gonna keep scoring every, you know, I mean, is that gonna keep happening? Because you look at it, it's like, okay, Water's got to find its level at some point, but then it's like, when you're talking about a guy like Puka Nacua, it's like, no, maybe he's just going to finish the season with 900 catches. Like maybe he's just going to have 100 catches every single week. And that's kind of where you're at with Josh Downs. You know, it's like, if you're one of those guys that's like, let me put it this way. If you're one of those guys that like when you play like NASCAR or you play like UFC and you look at like race history or like fight history, like that's your kind of Josh Downs. If you're the kind of guy where it's like, I'm trying to kind of project what I think is going to happen in the future, at least for this week, I think I like Deontay Johnson. It's weird to say Josh Downs is safer because you almost feel like Josh Downs can't be safe any week. But with Gardner out there, it's like they're going to throw it a minimum of 640 times a day.
Yeah,
it's just Gardner's like he's like, I guess now Bajent with Chicago, but like these guys are just like the epitome of like a gunslinger. Like we're just going to go out, we're going to throw the ball 60 times and we're going to ice our shoulder and we're going to do it again next week. So
they're not going to be down.
What you want.
They're not going to be losing this week because they're playing the Saints.
Well,
but
yeah,
they're still going to keep throwing the ball.
Is that weird that line's moving?
I can't pick a Saints. I pick the Saints every week and I pick the Colts every week, and neither of them ever works. So I really hate that game. What did I end up doing?
Did you see? It's 2.5.
I took the Colts in the over.
Yeah, see, I like the Colts, but it's like the fact that the line's Saints are getting more points and there's more stuff coming out about there being illnesses and stuff. It's like weird that it's that way.
Who's the favorite right now?
The Saints.
Okay. Yeah, I took Colts plus 1.5 the other day. and then I took the
so
over 43.
it's up to 2.5.
Yeah.
So
Deontay Johnson was 5 for 79 last week, by the way.
Okay. So yeah, and that's kind of what you want. Let me I just want to pull up, see how many snaps he played last week.
I was gonna look at targets. He had 6 targets. Pickens only had 8.
So five catches on 6 targets.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a ratio you like to see. That's a good ratio.
Pickett also only threw the ball 25 times.
Deontay Johnson. Looks like he was on the field 68% of the snaps.
First game back,
which, good. Yeah, and there are certain receivers, not to go back, but like a Zay Flowers, where it's like if he's under like 80%, you're like, why is this guy not on the field? But a guy like Deontay Johnson, his usage is not necessarily always, his usage and his snap count aren't always 1-1, if that makes sense. His usage could be 70% or something stupid high for a receiver for when he's on the field. But yeah, you assume he's going to get, you assume that goes up, 10%, something like that. If Deontay Johnson's playing 75-80% of the snaps, obviously he's fully ready to go. So I would play Deontay Johnson, not confidently. You're not going to like to hear this, but the ultimate hold your nose, this bet makes no sense, hammer massive lock of the week. Like, what is this Vikings Packers line? Like, the Packers fucking suck. Like Jordan Love sucks. And somehow they're going to beat the Vikings by probably 2 touchdowns today, because that line makes 0
2 touchdowns. Oh gosh.
I mean, what do we like? We just saw them beat the 49ers. They're going to lose to the Packers. We've seen what the 49ers have done to the Packers in the past too.
Yeah.
And the Vikings, all of a sudden, they go on national TV. Kirk Cousins looks like 1 p.m. Kirk Cousins at 8:30 on a Monday. Was it Monday night? I think, right? It was Monday night.
Mm-hmm. Monday.
8:30 on a Monday night, and now all of a sudden you're getting the Packers at, I don't even know, what are they? It's like basically a pick 'em. I think they're a 1-point dog. Like,
who's a 1-point dog now?
The Packers. I think it's been like right at, that's been the line all week.
Yeah, it's like 1.5 1. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of those things that I kind of like. I don't know. I didn't necessarily think they were gonna give you like Vikings like 3.5, but I thought it was gonna be like 2.5 or 3. I don't know. Maybe this is the week Jordan Love doesn't play like Jordan Love.
The public line on that surprised me, given the line.
I haven't even looked at the public, but it's like, tell me they're on the Packers.
Yeah, it's 63% Packers. Now it says money is 83% Packers. So
yeah, right. So yeah, exactly. If you're looking, 83% of the money, and the line stayed right where it is. Hasn't even gotten close to a field goal.
No, it's gone towards the Packers a little. Because
I also did have a realization about halfway through the third quarter on a Monday night that most weeks between bets, DFS, and fantasy, my happiness is tied way more to the Vikings and the Giants than the Ravens. Like, if the Ravens win and the Vikings and the Giants lose, it's like my week is fucked. And it's like, I'm not even fans of this. Like, but I just get so invested in these teams because of whether it's bets or whether it's just a couple guys on fantasy, or it's just like I end up betting the Vikings every week. So this is like the 1 week, and you know me, I'll bet the Vikings most weeks. I'm the guy that's like, the Vikings can beat any team. Have I ever advertised?
I can't do that. Person?
Yeah, well, you're smarter than I am.
Am I even going to be able to watch the Vikings today? Let's see if they're on.
I can't ever. That's probably why I'll never move out of Baltimore, because I can't imagine just like not turning a TV on and being like, okay, the Ravens is on one of 2 channels today.
Yeah, but hear me out. I didn't have to watch Vikings Bucks week 1 except on Red Zone. So who's winning?
It's fair. Let's
I did not get to watch this week.
So
Rams,
that means
Cowboys, and Jags, Steelers. Oh,
so you can't watch the Vikings. That means the Vikings are probably going to win. That's what I would say. So ignore everything I
well,
just said.
the games I've been able to watch were the Chiefs, the Niners, the Eagles, all the good teams. And I watched the Bears because I was at a bar.
What was the
So
final Eagles score? Or what would they end up? What was it, a
34-28,
touchdown?
something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was one possession, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Of course it was one possession. All our games are one possession.
It's and I was just saying it is funny because
legitimately all of our games.
Well, and you can put players in and out. You can have Justin Jefferson. You cannot have Justin Jefferson. It doesn't matter. You're going to play up to your competition. You're going to play down to your competition. You'll play a high school team and you'll somehow beat them like 9-7. And it's like, how did that happen? It's like, that's just what the Vikings.
I told my buddy, I said, because when Jefferson got hurt, I was like, well, I thought we were going to be 2-5 after the Niners game anyway. So I still think we're going to be 2-5. I still think we'll beat the Bears. I still think we'll lose to San Francisco. He's like, I don't know. Bears might beat you. And then Justin Fields got hurt. The Bears didn't beat us. And then somehow we beat the Niners. So everything's looking up for us until we lose to Green Bay.
Well, but now you can't watch. So maybe you're going to beat them.
We'll see. Michael Montgomery asked, who's your favorite DFS plays for the afternoon window only?
Afternoon, I guess that would just mean like the 1 o'clock and the 4 o'clock. Is that what we would assume?
I assume that means the late slate. So Eastern time would be 4 o'clock.
All right. Well, here, I'll go through a couple.
Some of us consider them the noon slate and the afternoon slate.
Some of us, depending on what the Sunday is like, considers it an early morning slate and a late morning slate. All right.
So that's Chiefs, Broncos.
Yeah.
Do you want me to go through the games?
I was just say I just pulled them. I was going to say because otherwise I had zero idea what the outside of the Ravens.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll start with the.
Go ahead.
I'll start with Brown Seahawks. Not much overly there that I love. If Jerome Ford ends up not playing, Kareem Hunt's in a probably decent spot there. But obviously there'll be some usage on Kareem Hunt, especially if Jerome Ford doesn't. He was doubtful. I don't know if there's anything updated on that. So I would say maybe I would go Hunt. Amari Cooper is always a guy that, he's one of those guys that's like, I don't really like or not like Amari Cooper this week. And then you look and he's got 8 catches for 106 yards and a touchdown. It's like, okay, well.
Yeah.
Which I heard an asinine take, which we can go over another time, but it's not crazy to say, but to say it is such a definite. Somebody said that the Cowboys would be much better off with Amari Cooper than CeeDee Lamb, which I think is a crazy thing to say. I understand the argument, but to say it is like such a definite, I still think CeeDee Lamb's whatever, but that's conversation for another day. Ravens, Cardinals, Zach Ertz out. So a guy like Trey McBride on the Cardinals, obviously probably some decent usage there as well. Maybe not because people see that Ravens defense, especially that secondary, and it's like, I'm not going to play much against it. So I think you get something out of Trey McBride. I think, and I know people like violently puke when I say this, but if you're playing, especially a late only slate, I think you can go 2 tight ends like on DraftKings. And I think going 2 tight ends in the same game, while crazy and stupid most of the time, when it works, it really works. So I don't hate playing Trey McBride and Mark Andrews together and kind of just doing like a mini game stack there where you can kind of play the Ravens side of it, play Lamar, Zay, and Andrews, and then bring it back with Trey McBride. And then you can kind of save some money elsewhere in terms of not playing the studs if you're going to eat some chalk, with a guy like Kareem Hunt. You brought up Mixon earlier. I don't love Mixon, but doesn't mean I wouldn't touch him. Chiefs are always interesting because obviously they've got no less than 9 weapons every single week, and all of them are just kind of like average to slightly above average. And so it's, they don't have outside of Kelsey, they don't have the Tyreek Hill or what they used to have. But yeah, like I said, in that kind of a game today, if I'm going somewhere, it's probably Rashee Rice. I also think playing a guy like Jerick McKinnon's not crazy. Playing a guy like Jerick McKinnon is always crazy, But
It is.
that's the kind of game where it's, this also could be one of those games. I have no idea what his usage has been the past couple of weeks, but this is just one of those games that I could see like at the end of the game, some way Clyde Edwards-Helaire has 3 touchdowns. He's got like 6 carries for 9 yards and 3 touchdowns. So that could be a completely, I'm just going to play this, kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, the Ravens-Cardinals game, I think, is what you have to like in that slate, which is kind of, I guess it's the second highest total. It's Bengals and 49ers and Ravens-Cardinals are both right at 44. And so outside the Chiefs-Broncos, which Chiefs-Broncos is going to be one of those games. It's going to be like 42-35, or it's going to be like 16-9. Like it's not going to be, now it's definitely going to be, but it's not going to be like 28-17. It's not going to be like decent score. Like they're either going to go crazy or they're just not going to score at all. Or Kansas City's just going to beat them like 45-3, just like completely. Like
that's kind of how I see it, but I still think the over hits, even though.
And that's one of those things where it's like, then you could, you never want to play like backup running backs or guys that aren't necessarily like in some sort of a share. And obviously guys like Jerick McKinnon still get touches, in close games and not, but that he could be a guy that, or even like I said, Clyde Edwards-Helaire could be a guy that if it gets, if they're up, let's say 31-3 halfway through the third quarter, like it might just be Clyde Edwards-Helaire or Jerick McKinnon for the rest of the game. Like that just might. I like Rice over Deontay Johnson, even the snowy weather in Denver today. Yes. Well, yeah. DFS, yes. Fantasy, no. I wouldn't play him in fantasy. I wouldn't play Rashee Rice in fantasy over Deontay Johnson. I don't even know what. Let me pull up. I don't know what Deontay Johnson's price is on DraftKings. Let me pull that up because I guess that's probably fairly important to answering that question. Oh, speaking of that, I don't know. I think he's like the 4th highest price receiver or something. But did you see on FanDuel, Adam Thielen is like the 4th highest price receiver?
Really?
Yeah, I don't know what that. I just saw something. It was like, I mean, I guess it makes sense because of he's one.
They
of
have no one else,
and he's about 10 catches a week. Like it's just what it is. Yeah, I saw that and I was just like, that's fucking strange. All right, let's Deontay Johnson. What is his price on DraftKings? Deontay Johnson is he's $5K. So that's a good price for Deontay Johnson. Yeah, I would play Deontay Johnson over Rashee Rice in fantasy. They're both $5K and DK. So I guess if I play him over in fantasy, it means I play Deontay. I thought Deontay was going to be like $6K. So if you're not getting that $1,000 savings, I think I play Deontay over. But I think that's also one of those where I could play Rashee Rice and not necessarily play others from that game. I think if I'm playing Deontay Johnson, I'm playing Deontay Johnson and then either like Etienne or Ridley or trying to build like some sort of mini game stack where maybe you go like Pickett, Deontay Johnson, Jaylen Warren, and then you come back with, one of the Jaguars guys and kind of, do it that way. I would say, I guess that way I probably wouldn't play Etienne as much because you're looking more of if the Steelers are going to score points throwing the ball, you assume it's not going to be as much on the ground for the Jags, unless they're just breaking off 70-yard runs, which against the Steelers is kind of, possible for sure.
You mentioned Ridley. Is Ridley kind of due, or would you take like Zay Flowers over him? That's a question from my buddy.
Ooh.
In fantasy, not DFS.
Yeah. I see, here's the issue. The Steelers secondary is just so bad. Like really, really bad. But the Jags O-line isn't great. So if the Steelers are going to get pressure, that kind of takes away. Ridley's the kind of guy that you need some. The 3-step drops aren't what Calvin Ridley thrives on. So It all comes down to, I think there's a higher floor or higher ceiling for Ridley. And I think the floor is higher for Zay Flowers. Just in terms of matchup and just in terms of like usage in general, where, Zay is the guy where it's like, if it's halfway through the second quarter and he's got 1 touch, it's like, let's just get this guy like 3 touches and see what happens. And that's just kind of what they do. So PPR, I think I like Zay. If you're looking for like floor, I would play Zay. If you're looking for a guy who you're trying to get 40 points out of 30 points, that's Ridley. That's what I would say.
Makes sense.
Chase versus San Francisco or AJ Brown versus Washington. You can answer that for me because you know what my stance on AJ Brown is.
He's always going to take AJ Brown. That's the answer. Yeah. That'd be my answer too, to be fair.
AJ Brown over the Monstars. AJ Brown.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm still not taking Bengals players unless, well, I say that and I'm going to start Nixon every league I have him, but no, I mean, Chase is always open, but
AJ Brown's one of those guys that, and not that Chase can't explode because we've seen Chase explode, but AJ Brown's just one of those guys where it's like when it becomes an AJ Brown game, and usually it's pretty apparent fairly early, it's like, okay, let's just sit down and watch this guy go for 12 catches for 140 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like Jamar Chase, it kind of can come out of nowhere. He could have 6 catches in the first quarter, first half, put up 80 yards and a touchdown, and then not touch the ball the rest of the game. He could do nothing in the first half and put it up in the second half. I like AJ Brown. Another one for you, Ayuk or Lamb. That's just another situation. I'm always just like, not that I don't like Ayuk, but like the talent difference there, it's just like you just can't start Ayuk over CD Lamb. Like just on pure, like just I'm looking at this like, let's just play the best player available. And because sometimes we do this where we like think way too much about the matchup, or we look wait. It's like at the end of the day, I'm gonna play CD Lamb over Brandon Ayuk. Like because if Ayuk scores more than CD Lamb, I can live with it. If I play Ayuk and CD Lamb puts up 21 points in Ayuk, it's like, well, what the fuck was I doing? It's like, CD Lamb's a top 7 receiver. Brandon Ayuk's the number 2 option on his team. Not that he's not good, but obviously there's a reason they go to Debo more than they go to Ayuk. So I'm not saying like this week, I'm just saying in general. So am I going to play a top 7 receiver in football, or am I going to play a guy who's, when everybody's healthy, the second option, the third option on his team when you're including a guy like McCaffrey too? Maybe, I don't want to say the 4th over Kittle, but that's one of those where it's just like, keep it simple, stupid. Like I'm just going to play CD Lamb over Ayuk. Why wouldn't I?
That brings up something a couple people we've talked about. Let's see. So my brother has Puka, Thielen, CD, and Waddle. And I want to tell him to
Thielen, CD, and Waddle. Okay.
To try to trade some of those for something. Who do you kind of believe in more going forward between those 4, or at least?
I mean, you got to think Thielen.
Yeah.
Right. You got to think he's. Yeah, I would say you got to think Thielen's the one. Well, on a non-PPR weekly basis, like his floor is just less than the rest, because not that he's not going to put up 100 yards, but he's probably not going to put up 100 yards on 4 catches. So it's like if you're not getting the PPR points, I wouldn't. Thielen's the one you think is most likely to, like I said, water reach its level. Puka is one of those guys where it's like, okay, Cooper Kupp's coming back. It's like Puka's just gotten more targets and more usage since Cooper Kupp's coming back. Like they're just throwing the ball to both of them. It's just, which is crazy because every time I bet on the Rams, I feel like I just watched them run the ball 40 times. It's like, why is Sean McVay still running the ball? Because he's gotten rid of, he gets rid of Cam Akers. He gets rid of Darrell Henderson. He brings Darrell Henderson back. It's like, clearly you don't have any running backs you like. You're not running the ball 40 times. It seems like you're running the ball 40 times. He's one of those guys like Staley with the Chargers where they don't run it as much as they seem. It's just because on the plays they run it, it's like, why the fuck are you running it here? It's like, oh, first down again. Let's just run it again. So it's like they don't really run it more, but it's like it's just way more obvious when they do run it. And it's like what are we doing? We've just thrown 6 straight passes to Keenan Allen, and we're going to give it to Austin Eckler up the middle. Like, no disrespect to Austin Eckler, good running back, great running back, arguably. Why? Like, we've just completed 5 straight passes. It's like, all right, let's run the ball, and all of a sudden it's 2nd and 9, and now we've got a incomplete pass, and it's 3rd and 9, and next thing you know, you're punting the ball. And it's like we just moved the ball 40 yards down the field and punted the ball. Like, how did we do that? The Chargers are back when what was the white running back from Stanford? Toby Gerhart.
Toby Gerhart.
The Chargers are like when Stanford had Toby Gerhart. Like they'll somehow move the ball 40 yards up the field. They've got a really good running back who can break tackles and is that kind of guy, but also can catch the ball. But on the wrong play, they're going to run it. They're not going to get anywhere. Next thing you know, they're punting from the other 38-yard line. So Chargers are always one of those teams where I hate touching those kind of guys, just like in general. But yeah, I mean, when you're looking at also like quarterback, like obviously Thielen's, bottom of that in terms of those guys, with their quarterback. So yeah, I mean, you also got to consider that when you're thinking about receivers. We always talk about obviously the playing CeeDee Lamb over Brandon Ayuk, just one, the talent over the talent. But it's like at the end of the day, you got Dak Prescott throwing the ball. It's like, okay, well, an average quarterback, like maybe slightly above average, but it's, he's good enough that I know that, if Lamb's open, he's going to get him the ball. It's not like, a guy like Bryce Young where it's like, maybe he's going to play well. Maybe he won't play well. Maybe he'll be able to see over the offensive line. Maybe he won't be able to see over the offensive line. All depends on if they wear their high shoes.
Yep.
Geno
Smith or Bryce Young?
Geno Smith or Bryce Young? It is crazy we're asking that question in 2023. And what's crazier, and I know the matchup sucks, I think it's Geno Smith. I think you have to, right?
I think I agree.
Like obviously the Browns secondary is not like, you don't look at the Browns secondary and you're like, I'm going to attack the secondary, but it's like, once again, it's just like, especially in fantasy, Geno Smith to me just has way more of a floor than Bryce Young does. I don't know. And the Seahawks seem more likely of a team between the two that if they're going to come out and throw the ball 40 times, the Seahawks seem more likely to do that than the Panthers.
Michael said McLaughlin, McKinnon, or Rondale Moore, just considering the running backs in the Broncos game because of the snow.
Is Rondale Moore considered a running back?
He's considering the first two running backs in the game because of the snow. I don't think there's going to be. I hope there's not going to be snow in the Ravens-Cardinals game.
Oh, that's true. That thought didn't even cross my mind that was a completely different game. I talked about it earlier. I think in terms of like a DFS point, I like McKinnon. I think it's McKinnon's, once again, if we're playing tournaments and we're talking upside, I think McKinnon's got the upside. I wouldn't touch Rondale Moore just because between Hollywood and Michael Wilson, I think that's the guy's name, Michael Wilson, right? Is that his name? And I've already talked about how I think Trey McBride's kind of in a decent spot today. And I would say Amari DiMarcado, but who knows what the fuck Gannon's going to do with those running backs where it's so funny when you look, because I've told you my fantasy team, like my bench is just all the Cardinals. It's so funny because it's like 3 straight weeks. It's like Baumel picked up DiMarcado. And then it's like Baumel picked up Ingram. Baumel dropped DiMarcado. Baumel picked up DiMarcado, dropped Ingram. It's like, I'm just going to keep doing this every week. Like if like, come on, Gannon. Like, I'm ready to do this every single week. You're going to switch running backs every week. I will switch and I will play the wrong one every single week. So yeah, I would say McKinnon. If we're looking for fantasy, just like straight, like I just need a guy who's going to come out and hopefully give me double-digit points, I would say McLaughlin. That would be what I would say.
I'm a little sad that I saw the McLaughlin first touchdown stat, and it's just like if you bet it every week, you're up a ton. And then I just ignored it, and then he did it again a couple weeks ago. I was so pissed.
It's just, and it's like one of those situations where it's just like, I know he's coming off an injury, but like I've always been a Javonte Williams stan. It's just like this dude, like he's just always gonna have another guy. It's gonna be like a Mark Ingram situation. There's always just gonna be another guy with him. That's just. Is McCaffrey a must play for DFS today? If we would pick one person, no matter the sport, that I've lost the most money in DFS by not playing, it has to be Christian McCaffrey. Because I just like every week don't play him because it's like, oh, he's 8,500, he's 9K, he's 10 grand, he's $14,000. And then he comes out and has 180 total yards. He's got 10 catches. He's got 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns. It's like, so once again, I'm not going to play him. So yes, he's a must play. But it's just like, at some point, those are the guys where it's like, I don't even know what his ownership's been recently, but I assume he's one of those guys that just minimally is 30% every single week, just, because it's, hey, who's the first guy? We always talk about one of my favorite quotes. I forgot who said it. They say when you're thinking about DFS and ownership, I want to think like what I call the shitter. The guy who at 12:15 goes to take a shit and he's like, you know what? I'm going to make a DFS lineup today. And those are the guys that's like, well, who's the first guy he's going to plug in? Probably McCaffrey, like 8 weeks out of 10. So that's kind of where it's like, okay, well, if I got a guy whose ownership is going to be 40% minimum, guy who could be up to 50 or even higher than that, it's like, I hate playing those high-priced, high-chalk guys, but then I got McCaffrey who scores. I don't even know what let me pull up his DraftKings game log. I guarantee you let's see. Yeah. So outside of the Cleveland matchup and then the Dallas game where McCaffrey, there was 42-10. So that was one of those games where I think he was only like 60% of the snaps, something like that. So if you're not looking at those, I mean, he's basically got a floor of 22 points every week and he's got a ceiling of 50 points. So for me, it's like, I don't love playing a guy who's going to have that ownership and going to be that high priced. But like when you're looking at guys that high price, you quickly go from the 9,500, 9,200 range where Tyreek Hill and McCaffrey are to these guys that are in the 8K range where it's like, okay, I can play AJ Brown at 8K or I can play McCaffrey at 9,200. Like, I feel like I'd rather play a guy like, and I know different positions, but like, especially if you're like talking like a flex position or something, I'd rather play AJ Brown and have that $1,200 to spend elsewhere. That's what I would say.
Another one for my buddy. I know you'll like this one. Is Josh Jacobs worth the stress at this point?
Josh Jacobs is always worth the stress. Always. He's one of those guys where it's so much more infuriating when he goes off and you don't play him than when you play him and he doesn't go off. It's just like, because kind of similar to like AJ Brown, it's like you kind of can tell early, like, all right, this is a Josh Jacobs game. Like maybe he doesn't have the stats in the first half, but it's like, okay, he's got 5 carries for 26 yards. It's like, all right, we're getting 5 yards of play. Like we're starting to get there. And it's like, okay, as long as they can keep it close, he's going to break one off for 40 yards. All of a sudden you're getting close to 100 yards. And if the Raiders keep the game close, he's a guy that's going to get 20, 25 touches, and that's, Josh Jacobs is one of those guys where it's like, hey, if I'm going to get 25 touches a week, and I know that's on the high end, but if I'm going to get 25 touches from Josh Jacobs, there's very few guys. I don't want to say he's a Derrick Henry, but he's that guy where it's like when the game scripts well and as the game goes on, it's like come midway through the third quarter, it's like, I do not want to tackle this guy anymore. Like this dude is just putting his head down and he's just running through. I don't know if you've noticed, but it looks like Josh Jacobs limps after every single play. And it's like one of those things where it's like, it makes sense because this dude is just like, he could go out of bounds, but instead he just puts his head down. He's like, I'm going to get 2 more yards and I'm going to put my head in your chest. So Josh Jacobs is one of those guys that I like playing. Lamar and Rice or Purdy and Chase. I would go Lamar and Rice. Can you explain to me this concussion protocol? Like Bryce Purdy, does he just like what?
No.
Like what?
No,
I don't get it.
He's fine.
I think they said the only guy in the past 3 years to play the same week he was diagnosed with a concussion was Pickett last year,
and it obviously wasn't a serious concussion because he was,
I could kind of see it
still in the game.
Yeah, but you saw how he played.
That was just our awesome.
After that, it was, it all kind of changed. Which we know has not been the case in Minnesota. Judy or Rice? I think you have to go Judy. That's just one of those where it's like talent level. Like you almost have to take Judy, but it's like, once again, I'm a Cortland Sutton guy over Jerry Judy. So it's like, but yeah, that's one of the things where it's like, can I convince myself playing Rashee Rice over Jerry Judy is the right decision to make? You know what I mean? It's like, do we, We can keep going for a couple minutes if you want. I'm just going to turn the TV on if you want to keep going for a couple minutes.
Yeah, I just turned my TV. I just
All
put
right.
on Red Zone.
Talk and do a Rand Paul filibuster while I go turn my TV on for 30 seconds.
Oh, no. Yeah. Packers Vikings. Scott Hansen is in the studio all decked out for Halloween. Very nice. Should be a good day today. Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 14 games today? Is that right? Are there no bye weeks this week? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I don't think there's any bye weeks this week. That's interesting. Good little week 8 where everyone plays. Did you know there's no bye weeks this week?
Not until you just said that. It was interesting and fun that I could hear you, but being on the other side of the room, I couldn't answer your questions, and it was just like, I felt like I like let my dog out in the front yard, and normally I go out in the front with my dog, and then I just close the door, and the dog's just like out there barking, like, anybody, like, where, like, did he leave me? What happened?
Yeah. Obviously can't place noon bets anymore, but any prop bets you've looked at already or no?
Yeah, well, I mean, some of these, some of like DraftKings, FanDuel, the live, you can bet props live. It's just hard because obviously if their teams want to drive or something, they're going to freeze all those props, and they change a lot, so it's hard to get to. But yeah, I mean, the majority of the props that I liked were in the afternoon slate, the 4 p.m. slate, as I call it. I don't know what the generic. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, looking early, like I've just been playing Alvin Kamara receptions every single week because he just has like 9 catches every single week. So that's one of those that did. Well, I can't ask you about the Packers Vikings game because you can't watch it. But
I mean, I'm watching Red Zone. It's on.
Packers went to +2. Packers just went to +2. I don't know what happened, but I'll take it.
Christ. Now we're on to the Cowboys game. I need this. This
is one of those things that would like never make sense and I'm sure if you like did the math, it doesn't add up. But like the Packers at +2 at -120, or their money line at -110. It's like if you've ever watched a Packers Vikings game, those 2 points are probably going to be very important.
Yeah. I gotta turn my other monitor. Deontay Johnson dropped a 30-yard pass. Nice. Good start for the kid.
The Rams-Cowboys game, between the uniforms and the field, is just one of those games where you're like, this is going to have 100 points today.
And Dak gets sacked again.
This number is going to keep going up on the Packers, and I'm just going to have to keep betting it. I did it at +2. It's +3. This is going to be one of those games where it's like I'm going to have the Packers like +2, +3, +5, +9, and then the Vikings are going to win by 3 touchdowns.
That'd be fun.
Let's.
I have my doubts.
Let's. Do you see? I know you didn't see it live, but you see the highlights of the Tyson Fury fight last night?
Nope.
So it's very funny because
you'd be better than that.
Well, yeah, but you're a Twitter guy where I feel like that's just one of those things where it'll come across you and you'll just click it, and even if you didn't mean to watch it, you would see it. But it's funny because it was one of those things where it's like, what did you say?
Go ahead. I was going to say I was playing too much Farming Sim last night, so I didn't have time to look at Twitter.
I was going to say, I know it's not the same, but I could see you being that guy that does the lawnmower sim for just hours and hours. And
I would love to do that. That would make me so happy.
Yeah. Carly walks in and is just like, what are you doing? It's like, do you see me? I am busy. We are on our 3rd lawn of the day, trying to support this family over here. What was I My brain's lost. What was I saying before that?
Vikings Packers. Tyson Fury.
Oh, right. It was funny because Ngannou comes over and it's like, oh, well, an MMA guy versus boxing. It's like, yeah, obviously the boxer is going to be more skilled at boxing. But just like when a guy like McGregor comes over, when this guy comes over, it's like, turns out like if a guy punches hard, it doesn't really matter whether they're in an octagon or a ring. Like if a guy punches hard and he hits you, it's like, I can't believe he knocked Tyson Fury down. It's like, we were talking about this guy who in MMA, like literally one shot, like doesn't like knock you out, like puts you out like cold into another universe. So it's like, what are we surprised that if he hits another guy, it's going to hurt? It's like, no fucking shit. If a guy hits hard, he fucking hits hard. People were just like, that's just one of those things where it's like, people are like so shocked. It's like, what, like 1 + 1 is always going to equal 2. Doesn't matter what fucking language you're doing it in. Like 1 + 1 is always going to equal 2. So, but
Lamb has 2 catches already. Oh,
who?
no. Please tell me that's a hold. CeeDee Lamb has 2 catches on Dak's first 2 passes. And it looks like Zach Wilson just fumbled. I thought there was a hold there. Oh, I guess there wasn't. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Giants have the ball.
Going forward from a football standpoint, if it was your team, rank these quarterbacks in terms of the order you would want them. Daniel Jones, Mac Jones, Zach Wilson.
You know
what? You can throw Bryce Young
prices?
in there too. Just in general. Just take the age into account. So obviously a guy like Jones is not going to have as much as a guy like Bryce Young. But those 4, I say 4. I think I said 4, right?
Yeah, you said 4. I'd say Bryce Young probably 1. Just because you know the talent's there, and you can develop it probably. 2 is probably Daniel Jones because he has shown it before, and then Zach Wilson and then Mac Jones.
I think it depends on if I'm the 49ers, I'm going Bryce Young, Mac Jones, Daniel Jones, Zach Wilson.
I think
if I'm like a team like the Cardinals or the Giants or a team like that, I think it's Bryce Young, Daniel Jones, Zach Wilson, Mac Jones.
Yeah, if you're a team with all the weapons and you just need someone who's going to be a game manager and not mess up, then yeah, Bryce Young because he's young and has the talent. But then yeah, Mac Jones to be a game manager and not win you games would be a good call.
Do you think if you replace Brock Purdy with Mac Jones, the 49ers are in any different situation? Because I do, but I understand the argument that they're not.
I definitely do. But it's not as drastic as obviously it's not as drastic as the Niners to the Patriots. It's probably they're 2 or 3 wins worse on the season, maybe. Not thus far. Over the whole season, probably 2 wins worse.
Because that's like one of those things like you just watch and you can see how the similarities are okay. Mac can do this if he was given this and you know, whatever. But then when you listen to the guys that are much smarter that break down the all 22s and it's like, well, like, no, like Mac Jones has 4 progressions here and he only gets to a second one every single time versus a guy like Brock Purdy who like will go through all his progressions and then come back to, you know, and just like, you're like, okay, well, if these guys are like, I'm not going to sit there and be like, which of these guys is going through his progressions and which of these guys is, you know, that's one of the things where it's like, okay, if somebody who played the game of football is like, no, this guy looks like a better quarterback than this guy, which you can partially, I'm sure, attribute that to being under Kyle Shanahan. And, you know, people talk about a guy like Shanahan where it's like he puts you in that position with the weapons and the offense scheme to have you succeed. But the other thing is like he also develops quarterbacks. Like, not that Matt Ryan wasn't good, but Matt Ryan was maybe the best quarterback in football for 2 years, you know. Was that Ferguson who scored for the Cowboys?
Yeah. This is the most obvious Jake Ferguson game of all time. That was so dumb of me not to pick him up.
Yeah, I don't play Jake Ferguson because he's dating one of the Cavender twins, and I don't support that.
They just flipped to the Falcons game on Red Zone. Do you have Red Zone up? Or
Yeah, was that Cordero? That I'm like I can half see this.
That was Johnny
Cordero
Smith
that
throwing a pass. No, Johnny Smith.
It's like the Arthur
Oh,
Smith
good, they
offense.
sacked it.
It's like the Arthur Smith offense. We're gonna have to force the way to throw the ball to Kyle Pitts, but we're gonna have Jonnu Smith throw the ball.
Yeah, I don't even think that was to Pitts. It was to a different tight end, 85.
If you're gonna have a tight end throw the ball, he better throw it to the other tight end. It has to be tight end to tight end.
Mm-hmm.
Also, this is gonna be a random question, but the Philly special or Philly or whatever the fuck they want to call that play, like, am I crazy? Like, that wasn't the first time that kind of play was ran, right? Like, that play was definitely ran before. Maybe there was like a certain formation or maybe whatever, but it's like people are acting like Peterson created that play. Like, maybe like that exact format, but it's like we've seen plays very simple. Like Andy Reid's been doing shit like that for decades.
Yeah, I would assume so. No, I mean, I don't remember any off the top of my head, but I don't think that's just unique to Philly. I think it's just
Because
named
the
after
situation it was in.
Because it was a Super Bowl and it worked. And I mean, it could have been the Brady special if Brady caught the ball.
Do you the Eagles in the Super Bowl, the running back who caught the ball, they called it a touchdown, but he was out of bounds, but it somehow was a touchdown. Do you remember who that was? Was that Boston Scott? I can't remember who it was.
Last year? Or the
no,
or the Patriots
when they beat the Patriots. Do you don't remember the
Get
play I'm
upfield.
talking about?
Okay.
You remember the play I was talking about?
No,
I think they were up. I think the Eagles were either tied or they were like up a touchdown, and then they threw like a 30-yard touchdown to one of the running backs, and it ended up standing. But he was. Let me figure this out.
I don't remember.
What year was that?
I was
Super Bowl?
definitely 20. It was
18?
in February of 2018 because that was the Minneapolis Miracle year.
2018 Super Bowl box score. Corey Clement.
Oh, another bad year.
Look at this. And I think I got almost every single detail right on that play. Almost.
Except for who it was.
I said it was a 30-yard pass. Well, to be fair, I asked. I said, was it Boston Scott? I asked. Because I knew it was I knew it was the non-Miles Sanders running. Like I knew it was the non-running back, which to be fair, Boston Scott is just the 2023 version of Corey Clement. Like they're the same player. So I said 30-yard touchdown. It was a 22-yard touchdown. So I'll take half credit for there because that intermediate distance. But they were up 22-19, and that made it 29-19. So it took it from one possession to two possessions. So that was the most important part. Because I remember it being like, oh, fuck, this is where this gets overturned. The Eagles kick a field goal. It's a 6-point game. Tom Brady does Tom Brady things, and they lose. But it's like then it got to two possessions. And I don't think it ever got back to one possession until the Patriots took the lead on, was it Gronk? I think it was Gronk. I'll say Gronk, and I don't want to, let me look this up, because if I say it was like Ben Watson and it was Gronk, I would kill myself. It was Gronk. Yeah, it was Gronk. It's so funny when you look at some of these names from this game. Like, you've got like Chris Hogan's got a 27-yard touchdown, Corey Clement, LeGarrette Blount, Alshon Jeffrey, and then Gronk had 2, or it's had 1. It's like, Alshon Jeffrey Alshon Jeffrey was in Chicago with Jay Cutler, right? Is that Alshon Jeffrey?
Yeah.
That Jay Cutler would just throw the ball up 12 times a game, and Alshon Jeffrey would catch it 10 times, and Cutler would somehow have 270 yards a game just by throwing. That was Alshon Jeffrey, right?
Well, I mean, it was also Brandon Marshall, but
yeah, but it was
the same time.
Jeffrey was there first, right? Jeffrey was there, and then Marshall came, and then Marshall left.
I don't remember
the other way around,
but I just know both were there. Gardner's going for it on 4th down.
Alshon Jeffrey. Oh, I remember him back in the South Carolina days. He was so good at South Carolina.
That I don't remember. I was a child.
Yeah, I remember. I remember he averaged like 20 yards a catch. It wasn't that long ago. He was in college in like 2011.
I wasn't paying attention to SEC football in 2011.
Well, I don't
There's
know
as much
why
as I
not.
could do to pay attention to Nebraska.
Yeah, he went to 2012 was when he went to the Bears.
Please don't miss. Oh, God.
All right, let me decide if I want to go over there. Let me I probably should eat something. So if I don't eat something now, I'm not gonna eat all day. This would be one of the Sundays where it's like if I don't eat now, it's like come 7:30. It's like, oh, I probably haven't eaten all day. That's probably not great.
Yeah.
All right, let me go do that. Any final things, and then maybe later if there's anything we can hop back on. But any you need any more Bommel advice, life advice, or football advice before I sign off for the day? Well, not for the day, but
was Greg Joseph missing that field goal the most expected result of the day, or will there be a more expected one later?
Depends how many more times I bet the Packers.
Okay.
And I will update you. So every time I bet the Packers, that'll be one more score for the Vikings. So if I don't bet him anymore, he's gonna miss 3 more field goals. If I bet him a couple more times, he'll probably have a couple field goals and they'll throw a Jordan Addison touchdown. So I'll update you accordingly so you know, since you can't watch that game.
Perfect.
So all right, let's do this and then we'll figure out if we want to hop back on later. I don't know if you're planning on doing anything, but I'm not leaving my apartment again.
I just got laundry to do, so just let me know.
All right, let's deuces, and maybe we'll try and start doing this most weeks.
Yep.
All right, see ya.
See y'all.